All right, everybody, this is the Otherppl Show. I'm Brad Listi in Los Angeles. Today, a special episode remembering the life and work of Tom Hansen, who died this week of esophageal cancer. Tom was born in 1961 in Seattle, Washington, and was raised by adoptive parents. He struggled with addiction in his earlier adulthood and wrote about it beautifully in a memoir entitled American Junkie, which was published in 2010 on Emergency Press and was later reissued by Soft Skull in 2017. Tom was a guest on this program in episode 158. It first aired on March 20th, 2013. At the time, I believe he was celebrating the publication of his retro noir thriller entitled This Is What We Do, and we had a great conversation, which I'm going to re-air today in tribute to Tom and his work, and as a way of introducing his work to some new readers. So my condolences to everybody who knew and loved Tom, and I'm happy to be able to share this conversation with all of you right now. This is Tom Hansen.
I'm in Seattle, Washington, North Seattle, sitting in my dingy little basement apartment. Let's see, right behind me there are a couple of wheelchairs and a pile of garbage about 3 feet high in my living room.
Okay, you said wheelchairs?
Yeah, wheelchairs, yeah.
So what, you have a bad leg, is that right?
Yeah, the after effects, consequences of the life I led for many years that I wrote about in my first book. And also I took care of my mom for a long time before she died. So there's wheelchairs sitting around here, and I'm just a horrible housekeeper. I've got a pile of bags and cardboard boxes and all this stuff that I was going to use to start fires, but it's unburnt. Just sitting there.
So I guess, like, you know, a good place to start, because you've led quite a life, and I know a little bit about it, but I think it's just good for us to get into like biography, you know, like, and we'll start close to the beginning. Like, are you from Seattle originally?
I am, yeah.
Okay, so born and raised, lived your whole life there.
Yep, pretty much.
All right, so talk about childhood. You were adopted?
Yeah, I was adopted. I didn't find out about this until I was 8 years old. And I this is part of the story that part of the American Junkie book story, which was, the story of my, long career, selling and using heroin. And then it flashes back to how I got to that point. You know, all these traumatic and big, life-changing events that happened to me, you know, where I kept taking wrong turns and it led me down the path. So, yeah, I was adopted. I didn't find out until I was 8 years old by some neighbor punk down the street. You know, apparently the neighborhood gossip had gotten around, you know, all without my knowing, right? And so I'm just hanging out in the backyard with this kid, and we're kicking a soccer ball around, you know, and we got into one of those kid arguments, you know, is so, is not, is so, is not, you know, and then he goes, oh yeah, well, you're adopted, right? And, this was one of the key themes of American Junkie, right? Because how my lack of knowing who I was and where I came from, and this identity void, that I had, right, was just like kind of a vacuum, and it made it really easy to, I mean, if somebody knows who they are, right, they know who they are, they know where they came from, they know who their mom and dad is, they know, you know, what's what, then they have kind of a base, right, to base their life on. And I tried to write about how utterly confusing and difficult that was for me to not know where I came from.
So talk about your, like, what about your adoptive parents or whatever, like the people who adopted you? What were they like? And like, do you know why they didn't tell you earlier? Because, you know, my sister adopted a child, and that child has known that she was adopted from, you know, as soon as she could talk practically. You know, like there's different approaches to how to handle it. So talk about your, you know, adoptive parents and how they made that decision.
Well, I just think they didn't know, right? You know, and what your sister, is that who it was?
Yeah.
What they did is the generally accepted best method, right? As soon as the kid can understand that, you need to get that information across. But my parents were just salt of the earth Norwegian immigrants, you know, that kind of stoic people that you know, that just keep on plodding, you know. I mean, there could be bombs falling, you know, outside the house, and they're like, oh, you know, what are we having for dinner? You know, that's how they were, right? So I think in that context, they didn't really think it was a big deal, because they were there and they were taking care of me, and they did that, and they did it as well as they could. But from a very early age, right, even before I was 8 and I found that out, I was sensing that there was something different about me from these people, because they were just salt of the earth, hardworking, stoic people that didn't think about the big questions of life, you know, totally unartistic. And, you know, I was very much the opposite. And then when I eventually found out who my biological parents were, the whole thing made sense, because my biological father was this madman painter, and my biological mother was this nut job artist too, and so it all clicked in, you know. And this is something else that I explored in American Junkie, is this nature versus nurture thing, and how the pull of biology is a fucking strong thing.
Yeah, well, it's okay. So you find out when you're 8, and then what does that do to you as a child in terms of your behavior? Like, did you start to act out after that? Did you become angry? Like, you know, like, how did it manifest when you were at that age?
I became very shy and withdrawn.
Did you talk about it? Did you talk about it with your adoptive parents? Like, did you go inside and say, I just heard about this? You know, like, what's going on?
Yeah, I did. And they just kind of, you know, oh yeah, we didn't know how to tell you. And I mean, my dad was up in Alaska. He was gone, like he was always gone. But my mom was, you know, yeah, we didn't know how to tell you, and we don't know who your parents are, and you're here now, and who cares? You know, they didn't understand the significance of that event, you know, to me. And then it was pretty much just kind of forgotten about, you know. And I suppose if I had a more aggressive nature, I would have acted out, but I was always kind of very quiet and reserved, and even before that, and it made me withdraw quite a bit.
And so then, what about like adolescence? Like, when did things turn for you in terms of like chemicals?
Oh, well, I got a late start actually. Yeah, I mean, I go to meetings and stuff, and I've been, you know, clean and sober since the end of, you know, since the American Junkie book began and ended 1999. But and I hear people, you know, I don't know how many times I've heard in meetings, you know, that, oh yeah, I started swilling from Dad's whiskey bottle when I was 9 years old, or when I was 11 years old, And you know, I was just a late bloomer, I guess. I mean, I was so withdrawn that I didn't even really fit in with the weirdos in school. And, so I didn't really start drinking until I was probably 16, 17.
And how did it take?
Well, then my dad died when I was 17, and that's when I really started going off the rails. I didn't like booze all that much. I mean, I would get drunk and you know, I mean, it was okay because it took me out of, you know, who I was, and, and I did it, I guess I did it enough, but, it didn't do the trick for me, you know. So I guess the pot and the booze, started when I was like 17, and then that went on, and then I started trying the harder stuff probably when I was 18, 19.
So may I ask how your father died?
Yeah, he died on a fishing boat accident in Alaska.
Oh God. You always hear how dangerous those things are, you know? Like I have friends who've gone up there to like work in the canneries, but like that's a really dangerous job. So he was that was what he did. He worked on those fishing boats?
Yeah, well, he was a carpenter actually, and he built houses at first in the 60s when I was a little kid. And but he had a drinking problem too, and he eventually you know, started spending too much time in the bar and not enough time at work. And his construction company went tits up probably late 60s. And then he hooked up with his Norwegian friends, and you know, because there's kind of a Norwegian immigrant community around here. It's not as big as it used to be, and a lot of them, you know, go on fishing boats in Alaska and own fishing boats. And so he started doing that, and it was before, I mean, yeah, it's a dangerous job, but it's a lot less dangerous than it used to be. I think it was sometime in the 80s, the Coast Guard or the government or somebody put in all these safety regulations, right? Because all these boats were crashing and sinking all over the place. And, so it's a lot safer than it used to be. But yeah, he was in 5 boat wrecks before the last one. And, you know, these horrific stories about the boat sinking and drifting in a life raft and, you know, pushing up on some island in the middle of the Bering Sea and having to stay there for 3 days with an orange to eat until the Coast Guard comes along. And yeah, on the last one, the boat sank. They got into the life raft. And my dad apparently, I mean, he was getting up in years at that time because I was adopted when they were kind of old. So I think he was like 55 or 56 or something. And, I don't know, he just couldn't take it anymore and had a heart attack or a stroke or something and just keeled over.
Oh God, that's awful. Well, yeah, no, like I had a buddy who was going to do that. Like he had this big plan that he was going to go up to Alaska and work on one of these boats. And, you know, you make a bunch of money. You can get paid pretty well. That's sort of the lure of it. But, you know, he went first, I want to say, to not Seattle, but somewhere on the Washington coast. I forget the name of the town, but he had some sort of connection through a friend of a friend, and he was going to go meet up with these guys who were going to go up there, and he was going to kind of tag along with them. And he got there, and all these guys were like super cracked out on meth. And apparently like that culture, like the people who work on those boats, or a lot of the people who work on those boats, are kind of staying alert and staying awake because you have to work really hard and do insane hours, and it's physical labor. So a lot of these guys are strung out on speed.
Yeah, I've heard that. And, that it didn't used to be the case, but I think, I mean, I guess you could say this about numerous different careers, but you know, because of the way the economic landscape has changed. But when my dad was doing it, you know, in like the late '60s through the '70s, you know, mostly as far as I know, it was, you know, men that had families. You know, they'd go up there and they'd work and they'd make good money and they'd come back and they'd live their lives. And then at some point it turned, you know, and these guys started doing that job, going up there, getting a whole, you know, working for 3 months, 6 months, getting a huge paycheck and coming back and blowing it in 3 weeks in Vegas and stuff.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. You know, I speaking of Vegas, I've seen that happen so many. You can always tell it's the guy who's there with his paycheck on Friday night. It's the most depressing thing ever. You know?
Yeah. And you know, what's that got to feel like, man, when it's all gone? Jesus.
Oh, it's the worst. Las Vegas, I had like a window of time in my life when Las Vegas seemed really fun and interesting when I was like in my early 20s, and now I can't even barely go there. You know, I'm sure there are redeeming qualities. So if you're in Las Vegas listening, I don't mean to bag on it. I'm just saying that like my experience of the casino, the casino life, you know, like that's my experience of Vegas. And I know that's just a fraction of the greater thing, but man, casinos are depressing. They really are.
Yeah. Well, I've never even been to Vegas actually.
It's worth seeing. I mean, you know, it's like, it's kind of like one of those cities. Like I always say, there are very few cities in America that have like a distinct character that differentiates them, you know, one from the other. Because I come from the Midwest, and a lot of those cities seem sort of interchangeable. You know, I was raised in Indianapolis and Milwaukee, and you know, they do have their little identifiers, but a lot of them, there's a lot of crossover. And I feel like New Orleans has a real cultural identity. New York has a cultural, you know, and I think Las Vegas, for better or worse, has its own identity. You know?
Yeah.
So
yeah, we've got a lot of casinos around here too, and it's just the thing about Vegas is it's never really interested me because gambling doesn't interest me in the slightest.
Well, I was going to say because you have you've struggled with addiction, but gambling was never part of it.
No, never.
So okay, so then speaking of addiction, you know, we were talking about the sort of timeline of your life, and you were saying that after your father's death, 17, 18 years old, you really start to go off the rails. Like, can you talk a bit about your trajectory and what happened during those years?
Yeah. Well, I left home. I moved because I lived 20 miles north of Seattle. You know, me and my mom and dad lived out there.
What year is this? Like, when is this?
77.
77, okay.
77 when my dad died, so we're talking like 79, 80 here. I moved to Seattle. I started playing in some punk rock bands.
What instrument?
Guitar. And I was a halfway decent guitar player. You know, the thing that kept me back was I couldn't write a song for shit.
Really?
You know, like I could play up a storm, but there was something about the songwriting process that I just couldn't figure it out. So I got in these bands, and you know, and the music would always be kind of mediocre, and I would always, and by this time I had started, you know, doing drugs too. And
which drugs? Like, what was the, you know, it's weed, it's alcohol, and then where does it go from there?
Let's see. I think I snorted coke a couple of times, not very much. Wasn't all that impressed with it. There was a period there where I was taking MDA quite a bit.
What, ecstasy?
Yeah, it was before they actually called it ecstasy. You know, it was like everybody just called it MDA back then.
It was legal. I remember it was like a big, I mean, I've read up on the history of it. Like that was actually like, it was like a legal club drug in the early 80s, and like it was huge in Texas. Yeah, like there's like, if you look at the history of ecstasy, there was a period when it was legal, and one of the biggest markets where it really exploded was in Dallas, Texas, which always strikes me as being somewhat funny. But
yeah, that's kind of weird. Yeah, so anyway, there was a period there where I just kind of rolled through all the, you know, that smoking Quaaludes on top of pot. You know, when you could still get Quaaludes and
what was a Quaalude? Quaalude's just like a downer. It's like a painkiller. Like what the hell is a Quaalude?
Yeah, you know what? I don't even really know, man. All I know is that you would crumble it up on top of some pot in a pipe, and it would zonk your ass out good.
Is it an opiate-based thing?
I don't know. I think so. I mean, I think this was around the time they were starting to outlaw it here, but people were bringing them in from Mexico because you could get them over the counter. And, you know, I don't even know if it's an opiate-based drug or not. Probably not. I think it's just a downer, some form of downer. But, I mean, I remember one time I was downtown. It was after a show. And I got in my car with somebody and we smoked Quaaludes on top of the pot. And I just went out, and I woke up like the next day and like 11 o'clock in the morning sitting in my car.
Jesus.
Downtown.
Jesus.
So there was a short period of that, but and then, God, you know, I tried to pinpoint this in the book too, in American Junkie. You know, when it was the first time I took opiates, and I don't even remember. I remember what it was, right? We were taking, Percodans or Percocets and drinking beer. And I just remember feeling really good. And, so that led very quickly to shooting heroin. And, you know, once I found that, you know, that was my thing. That was what I'd been looking for, in the booze and everything else.
And you don't remember the first time you shot heroin? You don't remember it, like the specifics?
No. This was one of the problems I faced when I was writing American Junkie. Is I have a really bad memory, right? So I had to track down hundreds of people and talk to them about what happened back then, you know, because I was also searching for this accuracy. And you know, the thing about, I mean, anybody that's written a memoir knows that you can hear the same event from two different people and get two totally different stories from the past because people remember things differently. You know, so I had to interview, you know, countless people about, you know, what happened in the past, and you know, of course, nobody was following me around the whole time, so I had to, you know, there are parts where it's solely based on my memories, you know, which are subject to my interpretation. But I wrote a little foreword to the book, you know, about memory and memories and how they change, and how I had done my best to be accurate and objective about things, but yeah, the heroin was the thing that I'd been looking for, and the other thing I tried to sort of show in American Junkie is how quickly this progression went, right? or how effortlessly this progression went, right? Like there was never anything about like, oh, I'm doing cocaine. Maybe that's a bad idea. You know, it's supposed to be bad or something. There was never any thought about stopping, right? Or like, I might get in over my head, or this might be a bad idea, or this might ruin my future. There was none of this thought, because I had reached this point already where I just didn't care, where the world had become so depressing and confusing and mostly painful that there was no safety barrier. You know, I was willing to go to any lengths to find something that would make the world make sense, and that's what heroin did for me.
And did you have, I mean, you're a bit older than I am, so you didn't get like the 1980s just say no education. You know, that was part of everybody, I think. Everybody who came of age in that era went through all that. So did you have like people in your ear, your parents or, you know, adults in your life when you were a kid telling you to be careful with this stuff? Did you have any kind of, you know, foundation of that sort, or were you just kind of going in blind and figuring it out for yourself?
Well, no. No, I didn't have anybody. The only family I had was my mom, and she was, the sweetest woman in the world, but she could never say no. She was very deferential towards men. And, like she could never tell my dad to stop drinking, and all through my using, she would say things like, when are you going to stop doing that dope, but that was as far as it went, right? There was never any like, you have to stop or I'm not going to see you. And I mean, she even hid money for me when I was selling dope,
So she knew all about it. She knew that you were doing heroin.
Yeah. I felt that I owed it to her to, and besides, it was pretty obvious with me, that I was into something, and I just don't, I don't believe in lying to people that you're close with, no matter what, or trying to pull the wool over their eyes, so yeah, no, I didn't have anybody. Well, yeah, I mean, I had, like a girlfriend at the time that, you need to stop doing that. But, she was boozing it up and snorting coke and stuff. And I'm like, hey, you got your thing, I got mine. Shut up.
I was going to say, not exactly the voice of authority.
Yeah.
So at what point does the music and playing in bands stop? Like at what point did you kind of just go full time into heroin and dealing and using?
Let's see, it was probably somewhere between 84 and probably somewhere between 83, 84, 85. And I continued actually playing in bands, off and on until like 90, but it always took a backseat to the drug business, because once I found heroin, as my drug of choice, right, the one that made everything work, then I kind of just stumbled into, selling it, right, around, 83, 84, 85. And I found out that I was really good at it.
What made you good?
I was able to, for the most part, avoid, the disasters that I saw going on around me with the other dealers, right? I mean, everybody pretty much, well, I think a good deal of people that get mixed up into that, drug, have grand ideas about selling it to support their habit and making a bunch of money, but very few can pull it off. For whatever reason, they're not careful enough. They make a bunch of money and blow it on coke, and that blows their whole business to hell. They can't get up and do what they need to do every day. There's 1,000 reasons, and for some reason, I could just do it. And I wanted to do it too, because because it was important to me, right? And I realized that it was important to me. And if I could do this and do it well, then I wouldn't ever have to worry about going without.
You wouldn't have to worry about what?
About going without, about not having any.
Right. Plus, you're making some good money too, right?
For a time, yeah. For a time there, I was running hard from like 10 in the morning till 10 at night. And during that period, which lasted probably a couple of years, I was pulling in like a $1,000 a day on top of everything.
And so how do you, because I've never done heroin, so are you using all day long, or is it the kind of thing where you go to work selling heroin all day and then at the end of the day you sort of kick back and, you know what I'm saying? Like in the more traditional work-a-day mode, or is it something that, you could be functional while under the influence?
Oh yeah, totally functional. Yeah. See, by this time I had a pretty darn big habit, right? So once you get a big habit, then you're not getting knocked on your ass by your shots anymore. They're pretty much just straightening you out and making it so you can think clearly and function, right? So I'd get up in the morning, do a big shot, get my head together, and then, go out with my car, run around and make deliveries all day. And then at the end of the night, I'd do another big shot, right? But it wasn't even getting me loaded, anymore by this time, because once you get past a certain point, it becomes like almost impossible to overdose or even get, that kind of high, right? Whereas you're like nodding out and stuff. So yeah, I would, I'd get up, I'd do something, I'd go run around all day, be on the phone, stopping at pay phones, there weren't no cell phones at this time, so it was just beepers, right? I had a beeper, calling people back, meeting my guy, getting more. There's a great scene that, one of the chapters of American Junkie, one of my favorite ones, that is when I'm in the hospital, right? I've been shooting up in my legs. I've got this huge open wound on the side of my calf, which is part of what screwed up my leg.
Yeah, what happened there? What happened there? Talk about that.
All right. Well, probably around, when I first started using, I had these huge veins, right? It was a piece of cake to shoot up. I didn't even have to tie off my arm with a belt or anything. If I had a syringe full of dope, I could get it in and out of my arm in probably 5 seconds. And, at some point there in the late 80s, my veins just collapsed. I never investigated medically why this sort of thing happens. I just know it happens. It happens to all junkies. Their veins kind of go away. it's some kind of response to being endlessly poked or something. They kind of dry up and go deeper, right? They go deeper under your skin to get away from being poked all the time. Or your blood kind of, your circulation system kind of changes, where instead of your blood flowing through these veins on the surface of your arm, it just stops going there and instead runs into these deeper veins that are deeper under the surface of your skin. Anyway, so they went away. And then, you're faced with the alternative of either, smoking it or snorting it, which are both kind of useless once you've shot up. It just doesn't work anymore. Or you can, go to all these fantastic lengths to try and find a vein, right? Like I knew people that would fill up the bathtub with scalding hot water and soak in the bath for an hour and sit in there and poke themselves 50 times. And, or you could just, jam it into your muscle, jam it into your leg, into your muscle and shoot it in there. It doesn't hit you. It doesn't affect you the same way as shooting up in a vein. It hits you slower, over a period of minutes instead of a period of seconds. But that's what I started doing. And then what happened is, and it happens a lot up here in Seattle because, we get this black tar heroin from Mexico that's all filled with who the hell knows what's in it, I don't know what the hell it's cut with or, why it's black tar instead of white powder. But that's what we get here, and it's filled with these impurities, right? So, when you inject it into your muscle like that, first of all, it's like shooting yourself up with boiling hot water, right? So it kind of torches that area and then you've got all the chemicals and all the cut and it ends up killing, a bunch of your cells around there where you shot it up. So I was doing that and then you get like a little black spot, on your leg where the flesh was starting to die, kind of, and then generally what people do is that's bad news. I'll go shoot up somewhere else. And you have this like revolving thing where you're moving all around your body, shooting up to avoid the same bad spots, right? But I discovered that if I kept shooting in the same spot, that I was starting to feel the shots almost as if I was shooting up in a vein still. I never found out the exact reason why this is, but I speculate that it's because of all the damage there. You've got all these like blood vessels and capillaries and trying to repair that area. You still there?
Yeah.
So, anyway, I discovered that, I was feeling the shots when I just kept shooting it up into the same spot. And so I just kept doing that. Of course it kept killing off this flesh, right? And then I'd end up with this freaking hole inside of my leg and but I didn't care. And I kept going and, eventually I'd end up with, these holes in my body that were like the size of a fist.
Jesus. You mean like an actual hole, like a gaping wound?
Yeah.
Ugh. Were you disinfecting and like bandaging or no?
Yeah, sort of, I was sticking like wads of paper towels in there and that's about it, And then, so I did that, let's see, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 huge dents in my body where that where that happened.
Like all over your body, like legs, arms, like where are they? Where are they at? Like just all over?
I got one on the side of each calf, one on each butt cheek, two on one arm and one on the other arm.
And so do these things affect your ability to like move around or do stuff? I mean, is it?
Oh, yeah. That's how my walk got fucked up. I was doing it on my butt cheek, right? You know, and it was a huge hole there, right? I mean, all the way down to the bone, right? I mean, I could reach into this hole and feel my hip joint.
Oh, Jesus.
And it got the bone infected, right? And basically my hip joint melted down. This is what I go through in American Junkie when I finally quit and end up in the hospital, and they're talking about cutting my leg off, you know, because my hip is all infected and the bones just melted down, the joints just mush. And my arm doesn't work right because one of the holes is on my forearm, right? And this is another scene where I'm in American Junkie, where I've been shooting up in this forearm for a long time, and I go out to drive the car and I feel something give in my arm, right? And one of the bones in my arm is broken because it's just melted through.
Good God, man. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable how powerful heroin addiction is, you know, to put yourself through that. You know, that's incredible.
Yeah, well, you know, and this is one of the reasons I went through a little bit of a crisis period when I was halfway through writing American Junkie. I kind of went through this, you know, the James Fry book had just been exposed as being crap, and I was like, you know, I had this period where I wasn't sure I wanted to finish the project. I was like, do we really need another one of these drug books? You know, what
was this, 2005? Is this when you were in Paris or no?
No, this was probably 2007, I think, was when Fry got busted.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's right.
I had some doubts there that I wanted to finish the book and go through with it. And, you know, I mean, I've got to have a clear vision and a drive when I write my books. I've got to, I have this strange methodology that I use where I look around me at other books and I see things and if it's something I've seen before or it's something that I don't like, then I decide, okay, I'm not doing that. I go in the other direction. And through a process of elimination, I finally end up with finding out what it is that I do want to do. And then I have to evaluate if it's a good enough reason. And anyway, I came to the point that I thought that my take on addiction was interesting and different, and that my story was more extreme than anything I'd ever read. So, you know, for that reason, I thought it was a worthy project, right? To show that, yeah, you can really be lost, you know, and find your way back. I mean, you can really be lost. So
how bad, like, how crazy did it get? Like, what was kind of the nadir, you know, like where can you point to a moment or a couple of moments that were like, you know, profoundly insane, you know, where when you look back at it, you're like, I can't believe I survived, or, You know, how many of those times were there? Is there anything that like was really like spectacularly nuts when you look back on it?
No. Nothing that nothing that stands out really. It's more the overall thing, and American Junkie opens with the very last day of my using, the day that I called the aid car and didn't put the phone down, and didn't hang up. And
what's the aid car? Just like, I need help, come over here and...
Yeah, because I was, I'm 6'1", and I've always been pretty thin, but at the end of my using, I hadn't been able to get out of bed for 3 weeks. There was like, bottles of 2-liter bottles of piss and rigs and shit, everywhere. I'd been having an ex-girlfriend of mine run the drug business for me and bring me dope and money every day. And yeah, I'm 6'1". My normal weight is like 170. I weigh like 110 pounds.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and I hadn't been able to get out of bed in 3 weeks. I had these freaking, huge wounds in my, in my butt. And it was bad, it was, and I had tried to pick up that phone and call the aid car probably 20 times, right? But I had always hung up. And, I don't know what made me not hang up that last day. But they came and they're like, wow, wrapped me up in a blanket and carried me down the stairs and out to the hospital. And I was in the hospital for 6 months, 3 months before I even got back on my feet. And,
what was withdrawal like? I mean, that's got to be a pretty severe withdrawal.
No, you know what? It wasn't that bad because my habit was so bad that they had to put me on methadone.
Ah, okay.
So it wasn't, I was in intensive care for a few days and lapsed into a coma for a couple of days.
Jesus.
It was, but there weren't any like super crazy, things that happened, aside from, there were a few.
Aside from these gaping wounds in your body.
Yeah, and that was just kind of a, I think this is why I was so good at selling dope too, and why I was so, committed to it, because there was some point where I just decided that, what, this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
It's like, it's my life's work. Is that really what how you approached it?
Yeah. And this is one of the things I write about is, even through all this, even through playing music, right, I still didn't find any identity for myself playing music, right? I played music and I was an okay guitar player, but I'd never received any validation for that, right? There was never any money, there was never, and maybe that speaks to a weakness in my character that I was always looking for outside validation somehow. But, I wanted to be good at something that seemed like it was important, right? And that's what I found with selling dope, right? Was that I was needed, right?
Well, I was going to say heroin in Seattle, that's a, the two, like in my mind anyway, seem to go hand in hand, like especially in the music scene. Like you were crossing paths with a lot of like notable musicians who were into heroin in Seattle, correct?
Yep. Yeah.
Like the Kurt Cobain, and then I'm forgetting.
Kurt, Wayne, Mark Lanigan.
So were you friends with these guys, or were they just customers?
I was kind of friends with Lane and pretty friendly with Mark Lanigan. Kurt, no, not so much. But
what was he? I mean, was he just not? Was he hard to get to know, or not friendly, or?
Well, by the time I was selling to him, he was he had a lot going on, right? I mean, he had the Nirvana was always happening, and then Courtney and the kid, and it's hard to. I never sat down at his place and hung out and shot the shit with him like I did with the other guys. And I think it was just, I mean, that can be kind of a strange, thing. I kind of got the feeling when I met him and sold drugs to him that he kind of, he kind of wished that his life would slow down and that we could sit down and hang out and just whatever. But, he was, it seemed to me like he was feeling a lot of pressure from everything.
Yeah. That's a rare experience that he went through with that kind of fame and that kind of meteoric rise. And, it's hard to even fathom what it must have been like, especially if you're, carrying around that kind of addiction and then you've got a kid. I mean, Jesus, it's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're married to Courtney, who was probably, she's probably a handful,
Yeah. Yeah. I met her a few times, after he died too. And I saw her when I would see him. And,
was she doing it? Was she using too or no?
Yeah. I'm not so sure, actually, when I was seeing him. I don't know that for sure. But I did end up seeing her, for business reasons after Kurt was gone a few times. And I don't know. I can't speak for anybody else. All I know is what I saw, and she seemed totally normal and cool and not psycho and, just mellow.
Okay. So you kick in 99, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And you're in the hospital for 6 months, that's an extended recovery, I think, by rehab standards. And then it was right around this time that you met your biological mother, correct?
No, that happened after I turned 21.
Oh, that did. Okay. I have it wrong then. Okay, so that happened earlier in your life, and then you kick heroin. But regardless, I'm interested to know about that relationship. Like, did you have an ongoing relationship with your birth mother? And I guess your biological father had passed away before you got a chance to meet him. Is that correct?
Yeah. He drank himself to death in the early 80s.
What was his name?
Jack Stangl.
Okay. And he was a painter.
Yeah, he was a fairly well-known painter in Seattle in the 50s and 60s. Part of this thing called the Northwest School, which was like 5 or 6 painters that kind of became a big deal in Seattle. And he's got a scholarship in his name down at Cornish College of the Arts. And yeah, it was kind of a big deal, but he drank himself to death before I could meet him. I met my biological mom, and she seemed really cool at first and gave me a Volkswagen van, and we would see each other every now and then. But when I got mixed up in the heroin, she kind of wrote me off again. She said she didn't want to have anything to do with me again. And so then I haven't seen her since the 80s. We reconnected, a few years back again over the email. And,
this is after you had stopped using?
Oh, yeah. Actually, I think it was shortly after I stopped using, we started talking on the email again. But I didn't see her. Then American Junkie came out in 2010, and she didn't like how I portrayed her in the memoir, and so we're not talking again.
So that happened. That's always a pit. It's always a danger with memoir, I guess, when you're writing about family.
No. She is a little bit, she's reading things into the memoir that nobody else is seeing. I guess that's the danger, but I made a concerted effort, with the memoir to not be one of those things where it's like a gossip thing or digging up dirt about famous people or trashing people in your family. And it was never about any of that. But she seems to think that it is somehow, and I don't know what to say to that.
Yeah, well, it's like I think especially when people are in the book or they're close to you or they're related, it's a lot more intense to read it, and it's obviously subjective, and like you say, people see things that the average reader isn't even coming close to seeing.
Yeah, well, everybody's name in the book has been changed, except for I talked to Dylan Carlson, one of Kurt's good friends, and I talked to Mark Lanigan, and they wanted to see the chapters that they were in and to make sure that it would be cool, and I showed it to them and they were fine with it. And so I kept their names the same, but aside from that, everybody, including my biological mom, is not named.
So let me ask you about writing, because, you played music, you're selling heroin, you're using heroin, you're going through this extended ordeal, with addiction. At what point did a literary pursuit become something that seemed realistic to you? Was this post rehab, or was it something that you started before you kicked in '99?
Yeah, no, I had it was after I got clean. I quit in '99. Went to live with my mom in Edmonds. I had no freaking clue, what I was going to do. Right. It was as if I'd been living in solitary in some prison for 20 years or something. The world had moved on and I was still in 1982, I had no clue what the heck I was going to do. I guess by default, I ended up, signing up for community college, because I didn't know what the heck else to do. Figured I better learn how to do something.
Did you have any money saved up from all these years? How did you, I know you were living with your mom, but how did you eat,
Oh, they had set me up with a disability check when I was in the hospital, state disability check. So I was getting by on that. And I was able to get some grants and some loans and so I started going to school and, just bumbling around the community college and, and ended up in a writing course where I think I, wrote the first germs of chapters that would become chapters of American Junkie, and got some encouragement and had a couple of good teachers that said, you could do this if you wanted to.
And so what about the transition to fiction with your next book? Like after writing a memoir and having to go through all the research processes and having to kind of, dredge through, your memories to put the thing together, was it a relief to be able to make stuff up and not be beholden to the facts?
No, not a relief. It was just a different kind of ordeal, or a different kind of work. I wanted to, I didn't want to be, I knew I didn't want to be one of those writers like, Marguerite Duras, who writes the same book 12 times over. So all I knew is that I wanted to do something that was very different, right? Because American Junkie, one of the things that propels the story is the flashbacks, right? It starts off, you see how bad this guy is, and then that story progresses along with these constant flashbacks that show the progression of how he got there. And that's a very compelling, thing. And if you don't do it right, the use of flashbacks can be kind of gimmicky, in a narrative tension kind of way. But I wanted to do the complete opposite. I wanted to write a story that was chronological from start to finish. No flashbacks. I actually argued with my editor about this a few times because he wanted me to start in the middle and flash back and then go on, and and that works great for hooking readers, but I wanted to do something, I wanted to just go in the other direction and do something that was chronological from start to finish. So, I had to learn all these new methods for, a new way of creating narrative tension, and generally I think it's pretty successful. To me, and that's what matters. I think I did what I wanted to do. I don't think people are really getting the novel yet, quite like they got the memoir. But that happens, Joseph Heller, you wrote Catch-22, it came out in 61 or whatever, and it wasn't a big deal until 1971.
Yeah, but books. What's the story that I always tell myself, or I always tell other people, is that I want to say Kurt Vonnegut wrote Cat's Cradle, which was his third book, and the first year it was published, it sold 500 copies. So,
Yep.
These things can take some time to catch on, and then circumstances can intervene. A book can get made into a movie, or there's all different ways that it can happen. But sometimes it just takes a while.
And writers are, of all the artistic disciplines, more prescient than the others. It's like, let's take that example again, Catch-22, right? It's kind of it's a story about World War II, but it's kind of written in this sort of, hippie-ish kind of tone, before the hippie period was even there.
Right.
And
that's like Kerouac too. He sort of presaged a lot of that, even though he didn't want much to do with the actual thing. Those books sort of, I feel like, I don't know, Catch-22, it almost feels like Catch-22 spoke to Vietnam era war protesters.
Yes.
More so than it did to World War II veterans. That maybe I'm misreading it, but that's the way it seems to me.
Right. Yeah. And there weren't even any war protesters, Vietnam War protesters, when it came out. So he kind of had a feel that something was going to happen there, but it didn't happen yet. but I don't know. That may be what's happening with my novel, because it's and then again, I don't know what people were expecting after American Junkie. If they were expecting me to write, a sequel to that that's all, happiness and sunshine. But that, first of all, that was never going to happen, and I think people are having difficulties with it just because they're so programmed to look for, the characters in the stories we read about. They still want the men to be heroic in a way, and they still want the women to be victims. And I reject both of those ideas in the novel. I don't know. I was just going, it was interesting how the novel unfolded, because I was reading something about Johnny Evison, about how he's got, how he works with outlines and has a big white chalkboard, with Post-its and lines and shit all over it. And I tend to work more organically. I tend to, by this process of elimination, of looking around at what I don't want to do, I finally arrive down at what I do want to do, or at least kind of a core idea of what I do want to do. And then I kind of just sort of incubate that idea for a while, and then I just kind of let it loose and follow it wherever it goes. And that's what happened with the novel. And I really like that method. I think it feels more natural to me, more organic to sort of find some magic and follow it around, rather than create a box and put the magic inside it.
Yeah, I mean, I always say I wish I could outline. I can't. I think some people can do that, and then other people, and it sounds like you're one of them, have to kind of work more intuitively and sort of stumble through the dark and figure it out page by page, But
yeah,
it seems like life would be easier if I could just outline the damn thing.
Yeah.
So I asked you earlier really briefly, and we never got around to talking about it. So I want to make sure before I let you go that I ask you about this. But when I was prepping for our conversation, I read some bit from a previous interview, I think, where you said you were in Paris in 2005 and you were undergoing a kind of crisis. And I'm curious. Right. I'm curious to know, what was the crisis in Paris, and why were you there?
Well, I was there because I had a freaking great AA sponsor for a while who worked for some pharmaceutical corporation and made shit piles of money, and she I was meeting with her one week, and she said, "Yeah, you need a vacation. You've been taking care of your mom and going to school and working your ass off, and so pick somewhere to go and I'll pay." So I picked Paris, and she sent me to Paris. The crisis, that might have been overspoken a little bit. It wasn't so much of a crisis as just in fact, it wasn't really a crisis at all. I was just I wandered around the city by myself.
Oh, that sounds nice. By the way, your AA sponsor, Alec, it makes me want to join AA. That's a good sponsor, man. Free vacation.
Yeah. Well, she's got to fly all over the world for her job, right? So she racks up these air miles, that she can't use, and so she gives them away.
Sure. And then you mentioned that you had been taking care of your mother. Now, is she no longer with us?
Yeah, she died in June 11.
Oh, I'm sorry. And this is your adopted mother, correct?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, well, she was 89. So, she lived a good long life, and the end wasn't, terribly horrific with a lot of suffering or anything. So,
that's about as good as you can ask for, in this life.
Yeah. It's her time. I'm really grateful that I managed to get myself straightened out and take care of her at the end. And, so that she didn't have to die worrying about me, that I'm still out ripping and running or whatever. And that's what happens.
Well, Tom, it's been great talking with you, man. I congratulate you on the new book and also on the memoir, and I congratulate you on being clean and sober and getting books done. That's a huge feat considering where you were, and where you are now. So, I wish you all the best, and I thank you so much for taking the time to talk.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, man.